the real deal. What's up, Real Dealers, and welcome back to the Real Deal Airsoft. I'm Jake, and if you're new to this channel, consider hitting that sub because we're always doing airsoft giveaways, talking about the latest tech, and doing how-to videos and answering all of your questions. Today's topic is airsoft a good training tool for real steel? Now, I just want to address this because a lot of real steel shooters on Instagram, such as Lucas from TRXarms, shout out to him. He recently went to a Milsim event and it opened his eyes to the possibilities of airsoft and how real steel shooters should consider, this as a training technique. And as somebody who's been collecting airsoft guns, has been shooting guns, teching them, building them, and shooting real steel guns for many, many years, I can safely say, duh, like what? Yeah, obviously it's a training tool. How is it not a training tool? I mean, you got to think about what is training. Training is engaging in an activity and repeating behaviors and learning and adapting. So that's what you're doing, regardless if you're doing it in a competitive way or a non-competitive way. I like to break down training for real steel into two categories. But before we break it down into two categories, let's define what is training for real steel. What does that mean? Training for real steel. If you're somebody who owns a real firearm, you want to become as proficient as you can with it. You want to be able to manipulate it, you want to be able to use it, you want to know it inside and out. And not only do you want to know everything about your particular platform, you have to be able to use it. You're training for the intent of self-defense, or if the world comes to an end, who knows? You know what I mean?
What is it? What's going on? The sky is falling! The sky is falling!
So it means you have to be able to operate your platform, all your gear, your whole kit in environments, and shooting at the range just doesn't do that. So I like to break it down into two categories of training. One is mechanical and two is environmental. What does that mean? So for mechanical, I'm talking about the actual mechanics of the rifle. The bolt lock, 30 round mag, clearing a jam, the mechanics of actually handling, manipulating, firing and reloading that platform. And that is what I call mechanical. Now, when you're comparing airsoft to real steel, yes, you can 100% train. There is so many platforms that airsoft companies make that pretty much matches every single real steel counterpart. It's not one-to-one, but you can manipulate it, you can reload with it, and you can get into the realism. You can get a DAS GDR-15. It has full bolt lock, 30 round mags. It's pretty much one-to-one. It takes mil-spec items, so if you want to train, you can train. Now, why would you choose airsoft? The reason why is because not everybody has access to a range. Maybe you live in a state where guns are illegal, but you still want to develop the skill set and the know-how so that if you ever do find yourself in a situation where you have to use weapons, not only do you know how to shoot and put something on target, manipulate the weapon and check if it's hot, check if it's not, and just understand the mechanics of it, but you'll also be able to move through environments that you wouldn't be able to if you just went to a range. So the mechanics is the actual function of the rifle, and you have to train at a range to understand the mechanics of recoil. That's one thing airsoft can't replicate as well. It doesn't translate over. They have recoil platforms, but it just doesn't translate over. So the training for real steel, you have to train for the recoil impulse. But once you train that muscle memory and you already have that skill set and you want to develop it even further, it's one thing to be able to be stationary and put a round on target, but it's another thing to shoot at something that's shooting back at you. It's another thing to process information very quickly in a high stress environment, and that brings us to environmental. So we got mechanical out the way, and now we're on to environmental. Airsoft is gold for environmental training. Where else besides an airsoft field or a Milsim event can you publicly and acceptably walk around in your full kit? Headgear, night vision, plate carrier with plates, training with your push to talk, your PTT, communication, carrying extra mags, carrying the actual replica of your platform. And now you're in an environment with a high stress situation where you have to advance, you have to use teamwork, you have to coordinate, you have to be able to move in and out of structures, you have to be able to move around people and be aware of your muzzle. There's so many different things that you have to consider. With environmental training, airsoft provides that. So to answer your question, is airsoft a good training tool for real steel? Because let's be real, in Airsoft, you'll find yourself running, sliding, peeking from really, really low corners, shooting up at people. You have to get creative because when you have fast engagements, there's a lot of information that your mind has to process that will never happen at a range. What do I mean by that? The indicator of who's friendly and who's not is very poor. It's usually an armband or a sash. That's pretty much all we got. So if I have one armband and I'm facing like this and you see this side of me, you have no idea if I'm a friendly or a threat. So in Airsoft, your adrenaline will be pumping, your heart rate's up, you're running around, and you have to be able to, you'll see this in my video, that I have a really fast target acquisition and information processing in my gameplay. I'll be running and I'll not shoot my friendly and I'll shoot a threat. You know, everyone slips up, but that's what the training is for. So when you're under high stress and you're running and there's a threat and you have to, your brain in a split second has to see, as you turn a corner and you see something exposed, is that a friendly? Is that an enemy? And your brain has to process this information and look for the identification because, you know, in the real world, you don't know who a bad guy is until they finally present themselves, but you can't take the risk of shooting a person that you're not 100% sure is a threat or not. So that's why Airsoft is gold. You will find yourself friendly firing. You will find yourself pulling the trigger really quickly as you turn a corner. It happens to everybody. So if you've never had that exposure and made that mistake, how are you gonna adjust it? You go to the range and you're just used to 1, 2, 3. But if you go into Airsoft and you turn a corner and you shoot someone on accident, guess what? In real life, you would have done the same thing. And you need to train more. And the range isn't doing it. So with the combination of mechanical training, which involves the range, the recoil impulse, the actual manipulation of the bolt locking and racking of the slide or whatever platform you use, that mechanical training of how to use and operate that particular platform is one part, and then the environmental is a whole nother. Now you need to take that knowledge and translate it into the environment where it's unorthodox, where you'll be in a tiny little corner or you're squeezing a door frame that's this big, but you're squeezing the angle so that you're shooting through a slit that's this small. There's so many things that go into it. And the last reason why I think the Airsoft is the best training tool for real steel is because of this. Choose your loadout. The real deal.